What's up, people? I'm here to talk to you about elements of story. My name is Seth Perler from SethPerler.com. Check out my website if you like what I'm doing. Share it. Thanks. Elements of story. I'm going to teach you about elements of story. I'm going to teach you everything you need to know really quickly. I'm going to speak kind of fast, but this is going to be a primer that's really going to help you with your writing. Elements of story. First of all, we're talking about story. We're talking about fiction generally, not nonfiction, unless you're doing biography or something like that. But basically, elements of story usually refers to fiction writing. And there are 5 elements of story: character, setting, theme, plot, point of view. That's it. 5 elements of story: character, setting, theme, plot, point of view. Elements, think about elements that make up a stone or something, right? There are these different elements, different pieces. So every single story in the world has 5 elements. If you know this, and you internalize this, and you pseudo-memorize it, but you apply it, this will help you with all of your story writing for the rest of your life. You, my friend, are the authors of the future. You have big things to write, big stories to tell. So what are we doing here? Again, we have characters. Every single story in the world has to have characters. Yes, every story. Everyone has to have a setting, a plot, a theme, and a point of view. Elements of story, the 5 elements are character, setting, plot, theme, point of view. Now, what do you need to know about each one? I like to distill things into their simplest elements, into the simplest pieces, into the simplest way. What you need to know about character. When you're building a character and you're writing a character and you're developing new characters for your story, here are the things that I tell people. One of the things is that your characters should be exaggerated. They should have exaggerated characteristics. So if you think about one of your favorite books or movies or TV shows, one of the books or something that has really impacted your life and had an effect on you, if you think about one of the characters in it, they are exaggerated. Their characteristics are exaggerated. So if they're smart, they're really smart. If they're spiritual, they're really spiritual. If they're mystical, they're really mystical. If they're odd, they're really odd. If they're a scared character, they're really scared. So generally speaking, when you're building a character, you want to exaggerate their most important characteristics, okay? Because what's going to happen when you exaggerate characteristics in your writing is that's going to allow the reader to really formulate their own clear imagery of your character. And that's what you want to do as a writer. You want to help them to have the best imagery they can develop with their own mind and their own brain based with your suggestions from what you're writing. So that's part of it. You want to exaggerate their characteristics. The other thing about great characters is you want to be thinking about people you actually know. So every time I'm writing any story of any sort, I'm putting usually one person. I'm usually imagining them as the character. So let's say that I have a character named Anthony. I might be thinking of somebody I know named Todd and having that person's attributes or characteristics put onto Anthony. Of course, they may not seem alike in any other way. Maybe one's a medieval character and one is a friend of mine in modern day. But when I'm thinking about their characteristics, I'm taking Todd and exaggerating his characteristics to put onto Anthony. So I really recommend using people that you know. It brings a really strong sense of authenticity to the characters that you're building in your story. Okay? So that's enough about characters. That's enough to get you started moving with developing characters in a conscious way. Next, we have setting. There are 2 things to setting: time and place. When and where. Setting has 2 things: when and where. So when you're building settings, you want to think about when. A lot of people don't do this and they just start writing their story and they're not really thinking about, is it modern day, is it medieval, is it futuristic? So within the setting, you really want to pick your time period as carefully as possible. And this may require research if you're going into the past. But either way, you're going to really want to consciously think about what time period is your story taking place in. Now, the other thing is place. You're usually going to have multiple settings in a story. And what you want to do with your settings, and there's, like, for example, I love how J.R.R. Tolkien does his settings because he gives you just enough information where your brain could create your whole world in your head of what it looks like, but he doesn't give you too much. And then you have other authors who give so much description, and that can work too. Either way can work, but either way, you're gonna really wanna think about what are the places that are important. Don't have 5 million settings in a short story. Like, really pick places that matter. Really think about that consciously. So you're gonna have character, setting, plot. I'm going to do another video on the plot mountain. But the plot, all you really need to think about in terms of knowing elements of story is the problem and the solution. A good plot has to have a problem. The main character has some problem, and the main character has to dig deep in order to overcome the problem. This is common in every single story. Every good story has a character, and there's a problem, and the character has to dig deep. You can look at The Hero's Journey, Joseph Campbell, if you want to. I'll put a link to that. But the character has to really dig deep to overcome that problem. Okay? That is what we human beings relate to in a story. If your character doesn't have to really overcome anything, you may be having a great time writing a story, but it's not going to connect on a deep level with your audience. Theme and point of view. Theme. Theme is just the moral or the lesson. A lot of students get caught up on theme and they start thinking about it in the wrong way. When I say, what's your theme? What's the moral of your story? What's the lesson? They think that they're supposed to have one main lesson and that the reader is somehow going to pick up on that. Don't do that. Okay? When you're thinking about theme and the lessons that you want your story to teach, you can have one lesson, you can have 100 lessons. That doesn't really matter. What matters is that you do have a conception of what you are trying to teach with your story, of some of the themes, but what you need to know is that the reader is going to read into it in completely different ways. They may or may not get your intended theme. They may get completely other things. You don't have to worry about what they get out of it. You have to worry about what you put into it. What are you trying to teach? What are the most important themes or lessons or morals you would be teaching? Don't get boxed into thinking, oh, there's one theme and the reader has. Don't get too perfectionistic about it. Be more general about it. What is important to you to teach? What life lessons have you learned that you can apply to what this character is going through? Capiche? Next, the point of view. Who's telling the story? Generally first person, third person. Is it more I'm telling my own story and you're using I statements a lot? Or is it more a narrator that's more all-knowing and is telling the story from that sort of a perspective? So that's, point of view is very simple. You just need to pick if you're telling it or somebody else is telling it or a narrator's telling it. That one's really easy. Again, characters, you gotta have a setting, you gotta have a plot, you gotta have a theme, you gotta have a point of view. Now you have elements of story. I'm going to go over the plot mountain in another video, and then I'm going to go over two other things in another video, which is audience and purpose. Once you understand those things, audience, purpose, the plot mountain, the elements of story, and the writing process, I'll put this all in my post, then you really have a basis for writing. I don't care if you're middle school, high school, college, graduate school. If you can put these pieces that I'm showing you right here together, you have the basis for any type of writing you can do. Don't let anyone tell you that you're not a good writer, you can't be a writer. Writing is an art. You are the artist. You have stories to tell. You have things to teach people and things to give people. People don't understand how incredibly powerful they are. You have so much to give to the planet, to the people, and your story needs to be told. So writing is magic. I hope you have an awesome day. I will see you soon. Take care.